Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Thursday. I hope you're having a good start to the day wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. As always, thank you very, very much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. We are almost there. It is Thursday. The weekend just feels like it's within touching distance now, doesn't it? Mikel Arteta's press conference going to be early doors tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. start at London Colney as he previews that game against Fulham on Saturday. There are going to be other Premier League managers press conferences starting today as well. So it feels like it is nearly there. The Premier League is back. The international break is in our rear view window. All focus now on the Premier League. Got the League Cup coming up in the next couple of weeks. Got the Champions League, of course, the Atletico Madrid game next week as well. So jumping headfirst back into the into club football. Unfortunately, only for about 3 weeks before we have to do it all over again. But let's enjoy it while we can, shall we? We're going to talk about the Fulham game in today's show. I think it's very much fair to start doing that now. We'll look at some of the decisions facing Mikel Arteta ahead of that game against Fulham, especially with Martin Odegaard obviously injured and out of that game. What's he going to do in the midfield? How's he going to set things up? We'll talk about that. We've got some comments and questions from you guys as well to get stuck into, round up some other bits and pieces that have been doing the rounds in the last 24 hours. But I wanted to start today's show by talking about this man. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm talking about Kai Havertz, of course, who is now close to a return to Arsenal. It's been 7 weeks since that knee operation. There was never a real sort of time frame put on his return, but sort of 8 to 10 week period was always the suggested period until he could return or certainly start coming back to training, that sort of stuff. The brilliant hand of Arsenal on social media. I'm sure you're all aware of that account. If you're not by now, then you really should be following it because he gets some really good news. And because he came into his own during the transfer window. But he tweeted again yesterday saying that Arsenal blown away by the approach Kai Havertz has taken to his rehab, and the German is in the final stage of his recovery and could make a return earlier than expected. Well, like I said, the sort of time frame, although it was never firmly put on it, everyone sort of thought 8 to 10 weeks. Could he get back before the next international break? If he does come back before that, and he's definitely going to be asked about this tomorrow, Mikel, at his press conference, no doubt about that. And if he gives any sort of indication that he could be back in the next, 2 weeks or so, that'd be a huge boost for Arsenal on so many levels. So I wanted to talk about him today, just when Kai does come back. And we're not expecting him back for this weekend, obviously. But again, you never know. We'll see what Mikel says tomorrow. But when he does come back, I just think it's going to be such a huge thing for Arsenal. Not just because you get Kai Havertz back, first of all, who's just a wonderful footballer. You'll know how much of a fan of Kai Havertz I am and what he brings to this Arsenal team. And I think he's still massively underappreciated, not by everyone, but by some. And he's been hugely missed at the start of this season. And having him back, I just think it's going to be so big for Arsenal, so big for Mikel Arteta. I think it's going to be so big for Victor Gyökeres as well. Just think the return is so important on so many levels. And we'll start just with the fact that he's a very, very good player and that Arsenal have missed him massively. I think he would have played an awful lot of games so far. I think he would have started an awful lot of games so far had he been fit. I think that would have been massively beneficial to Victor Gyökeres as well. And I know there's an argument, and I've seen it, people mention it, I've listened to people talk about it, that, it's actually kind of a good thing that Gyökeres has had to be sort of thrown in maybe more than Arsenal and Arteta would have been hoping for at the start of the season, because that's helped him acclimatise and all that sort of stuff. I'm not exactly sure if that's right or not. In my mind, I think Victor Gyökeres would be in a much better position now had he not had to have just played all of the time. I think he'd be probably fitter, or he'd be in better shape, he'd be healthier, he'd be coming on in games at times, he'd be starting games at times. Don't get me wrong, I think he would have started plenty of games already, but I still think maybe those early big games, the trips to Old Trafford and Anfield, I think those would have been Kai Havertz games. And I think then when you're bringing Victor Gyökeres on with half an hour to go in some of those games against tiring defences, I think he could make a huge, huge difference. And I think Havertz coming back is going to be massive for Gyökeres. Just being able to share the burden on him, I think, sort of mentally, but physically as well. I just think we're going to see a better Victor Gyökeres because of it. So I think that's a massive plus. And I really do think we'll see a bit better Victor Gyökeres because of it. And I think we'll see a Victor Gyökeres, whether he's starting games or if he's coming on in games, who's just going to be able to hurt tiring defences really, really well. I also think for Mikel Arteta, it's obviously great for the squad because you've got a choice then. It's not just one striker that you're basically having to play all the time. You can mix and match. You can to start who you want to start depending on the opposition. I think flexibility-wise, it gives him so much though, because I think we will see Havertz in a deeper position at times, especially at the moment. I think Martin Odegaard's out. I think Havertz will definitely be an option in one of those 8 positions. And I think we'll see him used there at times this season when he's back. I think we'll see Havertz and Gyökeres on the pitch at the same time, which I think is a real tantalising prospect. Myself, I think the options that will give Arsenal in terms of how they play, attacking options, having 2 big guys in the box at times, Havertz crashing the box, Gyökeres in and around it. I just think it opens up a world of possibilities for Arsenal. They've missed Havertz's work rate. They've missed his technique when he's on the ball. They've missed his quality in front of goal, which, by the time he got injured last season, I think had he not got injured, Havertz was on for a 25-goal season last season, no doubt in my mind about that. So I just think it's a massive thing on all levels. So let me know your thoughts on it as well. Are you as excited as me about Kai Havertz's return and what it's going to bring to this team and the different options it's going to allow Mikel Arteta to use in games, tactically, everything? Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Now, obviously, we think that it's going to come too early for Fulham. I'd be very, very surprised if he's in the running for Fulham. He would have to have been training, you would think, throughout the international break for that to be the case. But we'll find out what Mikel Arteta has to say in it tomorrow. But there is going to be no Martin Odegaard, of course, and that's something Arsenal are going to have to get used to for the next period of games until after the next international break. So what are you going to do? What is Mikel Arteta going to do in Martin Odegaard's absence? It's going to be interesting to see. I think on Saturday, I'd be very, very surprised if it's not Eze in the Odegaard position and then one of Martinelli and Trossard out wide on the left. There are 3 games next week, though, and every single week we've got coming up until the next international break. Basically, it's a game every 3 or 4 days. So I don't think Eze is going to be starting every single match. So what are you going to do? I look ahead to that Atletico Madrid game, for example, in midweek in the Champions League, and I wonder, is that going to be a game where maybe Eze gets a rest and you can bring in you can bring in a Marino, you can do something, you can rejig the midfield, you got Ethan Nwaneri as the option as well. I think this is a period of games that we've got coming up where we're going to see Mikel really balance and rotate his squad and try and share out the minutes. We might see that midfield 3 that seems to annoy an awful lot of people at times. I don't know. I was chatting, and we've got the Arsenal Press Pass show coming up for Inside Arsenal Patreon members later on today. I'm sure we're going to talk about this in the show, but we were chatting on our WhatsApp group earlier today, myself, Sam, and Si, and we were talking about that midfield 3 and how it kind of feels like it needs to be one of Rice or Marino playing. The 2 of them, when they play together in those sort of more advanced roles, it just doesn't seem to work. It doesn't seem to be the right sort of connection there when those 3 are playing together. But when you look to when, say, Marino's last really impressive game playing in one of those midfield positions was against Nottingham Forest, and that was a game that Declan Rice started on the bench. We had Odegaard starting, he got injured, but Nwaneri came on, and Marino played really well in those positions. But when Marino and Rice play together, they kind of cancel each other out. And so, it'll be interesting to see what Mikel does and if he uses that midfield 3 or if he's noticed that same thing. We might see one of the others sort of left out, whether it be Marino or Rice in future games. But I think for this weekend against Fulham, my choice of midfield, and I think the midfield that he's going to go with, certainly judging by what he was doing before the last international break, will be Eze playing in the Odegaard role, and then you'll have Zubimendi and Rice playing in that 3, and then it will be one of Trossard or Martinelli on the left-hand side. Do let me know your thoughts on that, by the way, in terms of what you think the team selection should be for the game against Fulham. Let me know in the comments below, team selections, your 11s that you would do, some of the reasoning behind it. Love to get your thoughts on it also. I can pull some of those together and get them included in the show tomorrow. Defensive-wise, I think sort of when you look at what he's going to do, you would imagine if everyone's fit and fine, that it'll be the back 4 that we have all come to expect so far this season. Maybe Gabriel and Martinelli as well will have to be checked over because of the sheer amount of air miles that they've done heading over to Asia, playing in South Korea, playing in Japan. Will that come into Mikel's thinking? We'll have to wait and see. But if everything is sort of given the green light by the sports science people, I'd imagine, you're going to want to play Gabriel and you're going to want to play Saliba next to each other, and then Timber and Calafiori on the left-hand side. Just on the Golden Boy nominations, you might well have seen this yesterday. The final list was put out yesterday, and of course Miles Lewis Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri are on there. You would imagine the winner of this award is going to come probably from the European champions, and it's going to be one of the PSG players in there. We'll have to wait and see, but good reward, you would say, for Ethan and for Miles for their brilliant performances over the last year for Arsenal to get themselves nominated. Plenty of Premier League players in there. Lenny Yoro's in there. Lucas Bergvall, Archie Gray from Spurs. Both of those are in there. Joel Hatto now of Chelsea, of course, but mainly for his performances for Ajax before that move. But those are the Golden Boy nominations. Congratulations to Ethan and to Miles. Right, we're going to get on to your questions in a minute because I've got a few of those to go through. But of course, it's a big, big day for the Arsenal women today. Champions League game at Benfica, going into this on the back of the defeat against Lyon in their opening game last time out. Arsenal really do need to get themselves up and running in this competition. Got an important win in the WSL, albeit a fairly unconvincing one at the weekend, but a win is a win when you've been on a sort of run that Arsenal had been on leading up to that game at the weekend, and hopefully that'll just lift spirits a bit, lift momentum ahead of this match at Benfica. Arsenal never played Benfica in the Champions League before, so big game for the ladies. Renée Slegger was saying yesterday that they know the importance of this game. They go in there pretty confident. She's very well aware of the threat that Benfica are going to pose. She's come up against them a couple of times before in her career, even though Arsenal haven't. No Leah Williamson yet, but she has started training again, Leah, after that knee injury that's kept her out since the Euros final. So yeah, big game for the women. Plenty of Arsenal fans heading over to Lisbon for it as well. What a wonderful city. One of my favourite cities to go and watch football, Lisbon. So it should be a really good day for them. Fingers crossed Arsenal can get themselves back up and running in the Champions League this season. Right, moving on to some comments and questions now before we wrap this one up. Bellew has got in touch and says, "Hi, Charles. Gyökeres, Timber and Zubamendi have played too much football already. I watched the Spanish game against Bulgaria and Zubi looked exhausted. Needs a breather. So my 11 for Fulham is Raya in goal, White, Gabriel, Saliba and Calafiori, Rice and Marino, and then Eza, Saka, Gyökeres and Trossard. Zubi comes on for Gyökeres around the 60-minute marks. Marino plays up front for the rest of the game. I understand Fulham away is tough, but the last thing we want to do is overplay them early in the season and lose them for an extended period of time. My starting 11 is good enough to win the game. What do you think?" Well, it's certainly good enough to win the game, no doubt about it. And I think you're right. I don't think necessarily you're right in terms of the starting 11 for this weekend, but you're definitely right in terms of how much football a lot of the players are beginning to play. And this is the period where I think Arteta is going to have to really sort of think about that now, because this is when the game starts to come thick and fast. You look ahead to this week, 3 games in a week: Fulham, Atletico, Crystal Palace in 7 days. And then the following week, you got the League Cup comes into play again. You got Premier League, then it's back to Champions League, Premier League, all before the international break. He's going to have to manage the workload of the players during this period for the first time really this season. So I think we are going to see changes. I think we've seen it from Arteta already, to be fair. Zubamendi, for example, he did get a breather against West Ham, or he was supposed to get a breather against West Ham before the international break. Obviously, things changed. Martin Odegaard got the injury and Zubamendi had to come on early doors, but he had been... Arteta clearly knew that he needed a bit of a breather, which is why he left him on the starting 11. We've seen that happen with Declan Rice this season. We've seen it happen with William Saliba this season. So he is doing it more so than he's probably ever done before. I think he's definitely going to have to do it in this period that we've got coming up between now and the next international break. Like I said, it's just that Rice-Marino partnership. Just not sure so much it works when they're playing together. Maybe it's different because you've got them there sort of playing as a kind of pivot a bit deeper. They're not playing as a 2/8. They're playing more as a pivot, and you've got Eze in a number 10 role. So maybe it would work a little bit better there. The thing with me, I just want, when Marino's playing, I just want him in and around the penalty area. That's where he comes alive, I think. In terms of the goal threat he provides, the movement he has in and around the penalty area. So I'm not sure I'd really want him playing in a pivot, Marino. I think if he's going to play, you kind of play him and you give him the freedom that you give Declan Rice at times. So I'm not sure it really works like that, but yeah, thanks for your comment. Appreciate it as always. Charlie has got in touch. It says, when Rice and Havertz signed, I assume they were given 5-year contracts until 2028. Yes. Do you know if either or both of those deals include an option to extend it? If not, as well as Odegaard, I assume they'd be high on Berta's to-do list next summer. I don't think they do. I can't remember back at the time hearing about an option for either. So I don't think so. but I wouldn't be able to say that absolutely 100%. Sometimes players have options that we don't know about. Leandro Trossard, for example, had an option that no one knew about, and all of a sudden it was triggered, and he'd extended his deal by a year, and that happened a while back, and no one knew about that option at the time. So it might be the case that one of those two does have one that no one knows about yet, but I don't think so. And I think you're right. I think this latest batch of renewals that we've got, get Saka done. Once that's done and out the way, then I think the attention definitely turns to this next batch of players, your Havertz, your Rice, and your Odegaards. And I'm pretty sure that will be, Andre Berta's on it. He's got it all covered. So he will know exactly when these players need to start with these players, and he will look to get them done. The Havertz one's going to be really interesting because he's a big earner, Kai Havertz, and the age he's coming up to. What are Arsenal going to do there with Kai Havertz? And can you give him that massive, a real, because he'll want a pay rise. Every player, when they go into these contract negotiations, are going to want a pay rise. So I think that'll be an interesting one. And in terms of how easy it is to get done. But I think I'd be very surprised if these three don't sign new contracts within the next year, if you see what I mean. But yeah, we'll see. Andre Berta's on it. We know he's on it. He's got a very good record so far. Binge AFC says, not just Liverpool, we must put the pressure on City, because when Pep gets it right, they have the capacity to go on a 20-game winning run, no matter how high the quality of the league. They've got guaranteed goals in Haaland. Rodri's back, promising new players in Shirky, a revitalised Doku. More than Liverpool, I see City being a challenger. One we write off at our own peril. I definitely don't write Manchester City off. I don't think you can. You can't write a Pep Guardiola team off. You can't write any team off that's got Erling Haaland. He's a player who can win a title for you on his own if he stays fit and he scores the sheer amount of goals that he certainly has started the season doing. And like you said, they've got players who are, Doku looks a different player this season. If Rodri can get back 100% fit and stay fit, then you know what he's going to do to the team. I still feel Arsenal is stronger than Manchester City, though. I still feel Liverpool are a better team than Manchester City, but you can't rule them out, and I would never rule them out, and certainly Mikel Arteta will never rule them out. But I do think they're still a little bit behind Arsenal and Liverpool, and I think if anything happened to Erling Haaland, I know they've got Marmoush, although I think he's still injured at the moment, but if anything happened to Haaland for any sort of significant amount of time, it just feels like that's their race run, if you see what I mean. They're so reliant on him at the moment that it would be a real struggle for me to see them picking up the points that they would need to pick up to keep the pace of Arsenal and Liverpool if Haaland was out for any sort of significant amount of time. But to be fair, since he's joined Manchester City, those injuries have been very, very few and far between when it comes to Erling Haaland. And that is it from me this morning. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for listening again. For Inside Arsenal Patreon members, we do have the Arsenal Press Pass show with myself, Sam Dean of the Telegraph, and Simon Collins of the Evening Standard, coming a little bit later on today, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you're on the member of the Discord and you want to drop any questions for us into the specified channel for Arsenal Press Pass questions, you know to do that by now. I will be dropping a message in there myself very, very soon to call for questions. So drop them in there if you would like. And if you want to become an Inside Arsenal Patreon member and get exclusive access to shows like the Press Pass, the FPL show, which returns tomorrow after a break because of the international break, then sign up. You can do that. It's in the video description down below. You can get the link, copy and paste it into your browser, go and sign up direct through Patreon, support the channel and get your exclusive content to extra shows as well. Have a good one, everyone. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.